Let's explore a few tools in Photoshop here. First of all, we have our layers palette over here that gives you the individual layers of the components of your image. Now, this works in Photoshop in a number of ways, but let's talk about working on an a portion of your image. So in this case, let's say I want to brighten this photo of the tree. I'm going to create a copy of this layer by clicking or typing Command or Control J, and that just created a copy. You can also come up here to Layer and New and Layer via Copy, and you see the quick stroke there as well. So I'm going to open up the Levels Adjustment tool. You're going to get to know this one really well. This works on the levels of the tonal range in your image. So we have our darks over here, our midtones, and our highlights. So you see this slider here. Now you can just pull this slider to bring up or down any part of your image. The highlights here, so you can brighten it. You can lift the midtones or bring the midtones down, bring the highlights up, and really just work with the contrast of the tonal range in your shot here. So you can see how that's changed here by toggling on and off the preview. All right, so I'm going to say OK. Now I did this on a copy of this layer. So I can toggle the layer on and off with this eyeball here to see the adjustment that I've done. Now this is wonderful because you can always go back to see what's underneath the layer. So you're not actually making an adjustment to the layer. You can come to your history palette here and go back. But this works because you can see what you've done by toggling it on and off, and you can also blend it. So every layer has an opacity here, and 100% opacity is fully opaque, and 0% opacity is fully transparent, so you can't see any of it. Now, we work with this slider to adjust the opacity of our layer, and in this way we can blend what we've done. So I created a pretty strong contrasted copy of this layer here, and I want to bring that back a little bit. So what I'm doing is I'm going to toggle this layer underneath off for a moment so you can see the opacity change of this layer on top. So here it is at 100% opacity, and I'm going to bring it back a little bit so you can see it becomes translucent, right? So I've got let's just leave it at like 70% opacity. And mixed with this bottom layer, we have just a subtle adjustment. So you can really fine-tune and blend your adjustments with the layers here using your opacity. All right, so if we want to change the color of our background, I suggest that you work on a new layer. Now you can do a layer via copy as I did before with that tree shot, or you can just create a new layer that is empty. All right, so I'm going to take the fill tool, which is underneath your edit menu option, and it's down here, fill. So fill is similar to other programs where it just fills the area that you have selected, or in this case the whole layer, with a color. So we can choose white, we can choose 50% gray, black. We have a couple of options here, but I'm going to choose color. So the color picker comes up, and I actually like that color, but maybe let's do a little bit lighter here. And I'm going to fill it, and again you can select a color from anywhere on your canvas with the color picker, but I'm going to pick that one because I like it. So we've got a fill here with this fun background color. Now we didn't actually do it on the background, so we can toggle it on and off, or we can change the opacity to lighten it a little bit, right? Because that can be done. So let's say that I want to work with this a little bit more. I'm going to open up the layer styles. Now that can be done by going to Layer and Layer Style and selecting one of your options here, or quickly, as Lovato likes to do, you can double click on the layer and your layer style opens up. Now you have different blending options here. I want to work with a gradient overlay. Okay, so a gradient is a fade of color. Okay, so you can double click on your gradient editor, and Photoshop has a couple kind of presets here, and I'm going to choose this one. So this is like, and you can see it happen to the image down here where we've got this dark to light gradient. Okay, I'm actually going to just keep that because I like it. Okay, and you can play with the opacity here. So here's that dark gradient going to light. Okay, we can play with it here. You can change the style of the gradient overlay. I'm going to keep it at linear though. You can change the angle that it's coming from. All right. And you can change the scale of how strong the gradient is. Okay. So here we've created a gradient. So that is a fade from dark to light in this case because we had a black to white gradient on top of this teal color of a layer that we created. Now, what if I wanted to do a gradient with a different color? I'm going to come back in here and double click on my gradient and then select this color here with a double click and choose another color. And this one, I want to make a little bit darker than white. So I'm going to go to a little bit of a gray. So I'm going from blue to gray here, okay? And I want to decrease the opacity a little bit. So now we have a blue to gray gradient overlay on top of this teal layer. And in that way, you can add some dimension to your background. You can also do this on your images as well. So let me just create a copy of this layer here to show you a gradient overlay on top of an image, which I wouldn't recommend really for this assignment, but it can be done. So I'm going to do a Command or Control J to make a copy of this layer. I'm going to double click on it. Oh, you saw there, if you double click right here, you can rename your layers. So it automatically names them layer 1, 2, 3, and so on, and copies. But let's say we want to name this gradient overlay. Copy. Okay, double click, and the layer style comes up. So let's select gradient. Now I'm going to bring it down a little bit so you can see what's going on. So this is the gradient right now. This is without it. This is with. I'm going to double click on the colors. I'm going to choose this one, which is a gray, this one, which is a gray to transparent. So we've got gray over here to nothing over here. But I'm going to change that color to, let's say, something warm, because I want to warm this up a little bit. Let's do this one. Okay. Now, within your gradients, you can also choose the blending mode. This one is a preset and was automatically selected as an overlay, but I'm just going to do normal. So, and let's increase the opacity. So here is a normal gradient overlay of yellow to transparent. So you can see that that just kind of warmed up the bottom of the shot there. All right. Now you can do darken, multiply, screen, so on and so forth until you have a blending style of this color, this gradient overlay, that suits you. So this looks kind of like, almost like a little lens flare. It just brightens up the image maybe that's not exactly what I want, but the point is that you can play with that and create different elements to your images. Within the layer styles, there are other options. Actually, I'm going to work on the background. So we can create different things to work on. Here's a stroke, our image. A stroke is basically like a border, okay? So you can add a border to the edge of your image or your frame in this case. If we were to be working on an individual image and we wanted to add a little border, that is what a stroke is, okay? So you can choose the pixel size. You can also choose the color. So that's how to create a simple border. You can also do a drop shadow. Okay, change the angle of it and you see that you've got a drop shadow here. So I recommend exploring these layer styles and playing with different things to see what they do to your images to create something a little bit more dynamic and interesting for this assignment, okay? So you can also do the layer styles to your text layers. So if I wanted to create a drop shadow on my text, I could do that as well. Okay? And you can change the color of your drop shadow and really work and fine-tune with all of these layer styles to create something interesting and unique that you like and suits you.